Well, welcome everyone to today's AllTranstek webinar titled Lease Abatement Auditing, the Final Step of a Complete Audit. I'm Eric Starks, Chairman and CEO at FTR, and I will be your moderator for today's webinar. Now, this webinar will dive into AllTranstek's lease approval service and lease abatement audit. Now, with AllTranstek's applications and trained auditors, invoices are processed and approved for payment and then analyzed to catch discrepancies in charges. So ultimately, the claims are made and credits are received to correctly reflect what each car should be charged on a monthly basis. We are very delighted to bring this webinar to you today. Now, the format of today's webinar will be formal remarks from our speakers. This will be then followed by a question and answer session. So the length of this webinar is scheduled for 1 hour. All of the formal remarks will be completed within 45 minutes. This should allow for about 15 minutes of question and answer. So let's move on to the formal presentation. Joining me today are three distinguished transportation professionals. I'm delighted to introduce Iris Morales. Iris is a car accounting supervisor. She has been with AllTranstek for 5 years and is a graduate of Sam Houston State University. We are also joined by Daisy Rangel. She is the mileage audit supervisor and has been with the company for 6 years. Now, she graduated from the University of Houston, and we have another University of Houston graduate in the house, Denora Guzman. Denora is the director of car accounting and has been with AllTranstek for 15 years. I'd like to thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Iris Morales, and I'm here with Daisy Rangel and Denora Guzman, and we're part of the car accounting department of AllTranstek. So we actually recently celebrated our 25th anniversary, so we were pretty excited about that. And today we will be discussing the lease approval and lease abatement process. So, which as far as rental charges goes, completes a well-rounded audit from beginning to end to capture any and all discrepancies when it comes to rental charges. We hope that this presentation is informative and can shed light, especially for the companies we do not currently maintain fleets for. Our service can manage your fleet, collect data, approve invoices, and audit that these charges are actually correct. Okay, so just a few key points we will be discussing. So first, it's just a little bit about who we are as a company and what we do in the rail industry. And then we're going to talk about what our department does specifically, which is car accounting. And then we will touch base on the two types of services that we wanted to talk about today, which are lease approvals and lease abatements, which pretty much you'll see they go hand in hand with each other. Okay, so for those of you who might not be familiar with AllTranstek and who we are in the rail industry, AllTranstek is one of North America's largest rail car management and consulting companies, managing over 275,000 rail cars. Our headquarters is located in Downers Grove, Illinois, and is led by our president, Jeff Wilson. We are an independently owned company, meaning we have no ties or funding from the industry or government. And we have the flexibility to tailor services to your individual needs, from large-scale facility management to specific assignments. So here's an overview of the services that we provide as a whole. So this is what we provide for the rail industry. We have on the top left, we have our client services, which is essentially our IT department, which consists of our business analysts, data managers, and systems engineers. We also have our AAR billing and financials under that department. And then on the top right, we have our technical services group, who provide operational support to the rail equipment supply chain. And then on the bottom right there, we have strategic services. They give a 360-degree view of the transportation marketplace. And then finally, on the bottom left, we have our fleet management services. Fleet management is our core business, with a team serving over 200 customers, led by our Vice President of Fleet Management, who is Allison Burnaby. Fleet Management manages some of the largest privately owned fleets. Our clients, depending on what service, can be anywhere from railroads, leasing companies, shippers, repair shops, etc. So the car accounting, as you can see, it's under the fleet management bubble there. That's our department. And, we'll go briefly discuss each one, but we have our equalization audit, our rental audit, mileage audit, and our back office services. And now Daisy will talk a little bit about the car accounting.
Okay, now we will go over a little about our car accounting department. We are located in Houston, Texas, just a couple of miles from the NRG Stadium and a few miles from the medical center. Our department has been operating for over 15 years. Our main role consists of coordinating the stream of data in order to analyze the car movements, reduce company exposure to empty miles. We work on tedious audits, tedious for the customer, but not for us, and a payment processing, freeing our clients to focus on their core business. Sonora Guzman is our director of car accounting and has been working in this department right from the start. She leads a team of 7 auditors who collectively understand the process to ensure accuracy of the audit. Listed here is a breakdown of the services our car accounting department provides. We handle mainly 3 types of audits: mileage audit, equalization audit, and lease audit. The mileage audit, which looks at the discrepancies in the mileage rate payment and the short payment of mileage paid by the railroad. The equalization audit, which looks at the discrepancies between the empty and the loaded miles reported by the railroads. And our lease audit, which is what we are concentrating on today, consists of the discrepancies on the lease rate charges or charges for cars sitting at the shop due to compliance. As we provide our accrual reports, which is a forecast of mileage credits, and our back office service, which allocates car hire payments to electronic data and also checks received by our customers. Again, during this webinar, we will focus on lease approvals, which lead to the lease audit.
Okay, so now that Iris and Daisy have given you an overview of the company and what car accounting is and what we do, let's concentrate on today's topic, which is the lease approvals. The lease approval process consists not only on approving lease invoices, but also mileage invoices, excess mileage, and equalization invoices, and other miscellaneous such as taxes or lease term settlements or anything else that you might be billed for by the lessors. So in order to sign up for this type of service, the only requirement is for us to maintain your fleet. And we maintain the fleets in a program that we call FleetWatch 2, which is what we use not only to maintain the fleets, but the shop data. And then our fleet managers will be happy to give you any information in regards to that. But at the end of the presentation, we can provide you with any emails or any other information that you might require. Okay, so like I said, as I mentioned before, we do concentrate on lease invoices, but we also approve excess mileage invoices. So right now, what you're looking at is a copy of an excess mileage invoice. I know that a lot of people confuse the excess mileage invoices with the equalization invoices. The mileage invoices, sometimes the lessors call them high utilization charges, or they just call them miscellaneous charges. But pretty much what they are, these are charges for that the lessor bills our customer when the car travels more than what the contract stipulates. So for example, in this specific example, the mileage cap is 50,000 miles. And it looks like some of the cars went over 30,000, 17,000, or 20,000 miles more than what the cap of 50,000 miles is. So in this case, the lessor bill the customer at a penalty or rate of 5 cents per car. So as you can see on this invoice, the charges can get pretty high. So pretty much what we do, not only we approve this type of invoices, but we verify that the mileage that the lessor is stating here in the detail is accurate. Okay, and how do we do that? This is where the car hire records come handy. Those are the car hire records that we collected throughout the year, and we build history for that. So pretty much we store those in our database. So anytime that we get an excess mileage invoice, we know to compare that data on the detail of the invoice to the data that we have in our database. And this is how we match it, and if there's any discrepancies, we dispute that against the lessor. Okay, so this is very important to keep track of this type of invoices. And then a lot of the times we do find that the lessors not only bill for more mileage, but many times they even include duplicate mileage. So, it's very important to be able to identify this type of invoices and to be able to verify, not only to approve them, but to verify them.
Another thing I want to mention too is oftentimes, the customer just sends this over to us, or we get it from the leasing company, I'm sorry. And along with checking that the mileage is correct and that it's being allocated correct, we actually check with the account manager and we verify that the way that they're billing is correct. So I know oftentimes they either do it, I think, an average cost per rider. So, for example, here you can see that one of the cars has 0 excess miles, but yet they're being charged $1,727 for that car. So it's just one of those things that we make sure to verify that it is properly billed. And if not, we dig deeper into it and possibly dispute it if needed.
Okay, thank you, Iris. So on the next slide, we have an example of an equalization invoice. Okay, so, like I mentioned earlier, an equalization invoice is different than an excess mileage invoice. This is when the result of a penalty for a rail car traveling more empty than loaded miles. So when the railroad reports more empty miles than loaded miles by 106%, this results in an equalization penalty. Okay, so that's what this is right here. So as you can see, this invoice is for over $40,000. And even though the leasing company only put miscellaneous charges, but what that is, we were able to recognize as an equalization invoice. Okay, and again, this type of invoice, we don't only process it for you, we actually verify it. So if we do an equalization audit for the customer, we make sure that the railroads are making the adjustments necessary before they bill you. But if we don't do an equalization audit for the customer, we still verify that the number of miles that the leasing company is billing is accurate. And again, we do that by comparing those records to the car hire records that we collect on a monthly basis. And once we match that the loaded and the empty miles are correct on the invoice, then we approve it. Many times we do find a lot of discrepancies. So in this specific example, the customer got billed over $40,000. Then once we did the research, we found out that the leasing company shouldn't have billed them. So this invoice was an error. So we disputed it, and the leasing company ended up canceling this invoice. So that's why it's very important also for us to verify those type of invoices.
Okay, so now that we kind of covered the types of invoices, now I'm going to talk about the program we actually use for the lease approvals. So our main program that we use for lease approvals is called FleetWatch IPA. So IPA standing for Invoice Processing Application. And as Denora mentioned, we manage all types of invoices. So this program as a whole is just a highly customizable series of procedures designed to provide a wide range of support levels depending upon the customer's needs and requirements. So this program has been designed specifically to help us manage the rental data and PDF invoices. This is where we approve invoices for payment and provide reports tailored to the customer's needs, which I'll get into more in a bit. Okay, so next we have our participants. So who's all involved in? So we have the lessors and railroads. We have AllTranstek, and then we have, of course, the customer. So the first participant is the leasing company, who sends all the monthly electronic data and PDF invoices in a proper format as requested by AllTranstek. So, and we also say railroads because they also send the car hire records, which originate from the railroads. And then the next participant is AllTranstek. So as the customs agent, we coordinate and collect the monthly data from the lessors, and we also make sure to store it in our database, building the history for any future reporting. Sometimes the customer likes to see what they've paid in previous years compared to current years. And actually, yeah, I've recently had a customer that they wanted to see all lease invoices that they paid in the year of 2018. And oftentimes, it could be for tax reasonings, tax purposes, or sometimes it's just to compare years as well. So it's nice because if we have, the history of it, the customer can choose to analyze the data whichever way they like, whether it's by fleet, by product, commodities, so on and so forth. So last but definitely not least is the final participant, which is the customer. So they receive the approved invoices as well as any reports containing the detail of their monthly leases. And like I said, it's customized according to their specific needs. And, we definitely work with each customer individually to make sure that we do provide, if they want to see the cost center, the fleet, riders, et cetera, we have that showing, and if they want it grouped that way. So here are the functions, or pretty much the process of the lease approval. So we start with managing the flow, the data flow. So we manage the flow of monthly electronic data from the lessors, including the PDF, invoices, car hire records, and any additional miscellaneous charges. So we follow up with the lessors to make sure the data and invoices are delivered on time and in the proper format. We also keep an eye out on any duplicate data or missing data. After that's done, we do a quick pre-audit just to make sure that we have received all the invoices. We also make sure that the appropriate cars are accounted for with the appropriate fleet, product, or cost center, depending on what the customer requires. Once that's done, we provide an accounting breakdown of the dollars in the rental invoices so that the transparency of each invoice is easily visible to the customer. And then finally, we consolidate the invoices at the end of each cycle and provide the customer with all the details.
Okay, going more into detail, the data used for the lease approval process consists of the fleet list, shop data, rental data, invoices, and car hire data. The fleet list is a list of cars in the fleet, both owned and leased. It is important because we use it as a reference several times throughout the lease approval and the lease abatement process. When our customers hire us for lease approvals, we automatically set them up in our Fleet Watch 2 program, which is a program we use to manage their fleet. This makes it easy because when we have a constant live reference file throughout the audit. If we do not maintain your fleets, our fleet management department will be happy to sign you up or give you more details. Part of maintaining your fleet is also the shop data, which is very important because it tells the auditor when the car went to shop and the reason for it. The other three requirements are provided by the leasing companies, which again are the car hire data, rental data, and the PDF invoices. In order to meet the deadlines and make all the payments on time, we have what we call the production schedule, which is a process 2 to 3 times a month during the service month. These processes are called cycles and can be modified by the customer's requirements. They are usually ran between the 1st and the 3rd, the 10th and the 15th, and the 20th through the 25th. Updating our customers' fleet data is an ongoing process. As a reminder, once we begin managing our customers' fleet, we ask that the fleet managers get notified of any changes throughout the month. Some examples of this could be cars going out of service, if a new lease is created, or if the rate changes. This is very helpful to us because as we mentioned before, this is a reference when we approve the invoices and when we perform the post-audit. Remember, the more accurate the fleets are, the more accurate the lease process and audit will be.
Thank you, Daisy. Okay, so after each cycle is done, this is what the customer can expect to see as the output for each cycle. So we have our rental detail, invoice summary, specialized reports, and the invoice package. So these reports can actually be delivered in several ways, including online and via Excel spreadsheets. So the invoice detail report, that's kind of the rental detail that we have listed here. It's a by-car listing of all items recommended for payment, including rentals, mileage credits, and miscellaneous charges. So it's helpful to see because if you want to see specifically how much a car is, if they have rentals, if they have rental adjustments as well, it provides all of that broken down. Another report is an invoice summary report. So that's just on an invoice level of approved invoices. And oftentimes we see that that's helpful to have for the customer's accounts payable. And then we just kind of categorize specialized reports. So this is if the customer needs more than just the rental detail, we can customize the reports by adding the cost center, the rider number, unit, product, fleet, etc. And then finally is the invoice package. So we consolidate the invoices in that given cycle and provide the customer with a neat invoice package consisting of the subtotals and totals, as well as the cover sheets of each invoice for the customer to handle the payment. Or, as another option, we can actually send all the details mentioned to the customer along with an invoice from us with a total amount owed to the lessors. And once we collect the payment from the customer, we can actually pay the lessor. So it kind of, it gives our customers the peace of mind that, you know, we just make it really simple, that we just provide a total and then we actually allocate the payment. But again, this can be arranged with each customer according to their needs.
Okay, so we have talked about the lease process, but now we're going to cover the best part, which is the lease abatement audit. And when I say the best part, it's because this is where we catch any discrepancies, anything that was overcharged, and as a result, that means savings for our customers. So once the lease invoices get approved and paid, we should start receiving the rental adjustments from the leasing companies. But we see that oftentimes they get overlooked by the lessors. So this is where we come in the picture. Okay, we actually give the lessor the opportunity to make the adjustments. But again, if they don't do that, then we audit or we do a post audit of everything that has been previously approved. So for the lease, and what we do, we try to do an audit a month or to 3 months after the fact, because we want to give the lessor the opportunity to redeem whatever charges were charged by error. Sometimes we see that the next month, sometimes it takes a couple of months. So, but we stay on top of things to make sure that the customer doesn't wait that long for those adjustments. Okay, so for the lease audit process, which is the post-audit, we use a program called FleetWatch LA, which stands for lease abatement. In this post-audit process, we concentrate in two areas. One is the rate discrepancy. So anything that was billed incorrectly or that shouldn't have been billed or billed at the incorrect rate. And then the second one would be anything that was billed for cars that were sitting at a shop due to compliance.
Okay. Here we have FleetWatch LA, which works hand in hand with FleetWatch IPA. This program looks at the rental data that has been previously approved and compares the essential information to the fleet and shop data, resulting in the records kicking out due to discrepancies and eventually resulting in claims. In the next slide, we will discuss more about the process. Once FleetWatch LA starts kicking out the errors, the lease abatement process begins. First, the auditor analyzes the records. They then label the discrepancies as claims and notify the fleet manager. Once the manager has reviewed the claims, he or she communicates that with the customer for any changes not captured in the fleet data. And once they are comfortable with the file, they then send it to the leasing company, which in turn communicates back with the fleet manager by either allowing or refusing the claim. The fleet manager then sends the responses to the auditor, and the auditor will load it in the FleetWatch LA program.
Okay, so as Sonora mentioned, the FleetWatch LA process consists of looking for two major discrepancies. So we call them a rate claim and a shop claim. So what we have here is the beginning of a rate claim. A rate claim is a rate discrepancy in which the lessor charges at the incorrect rate, or the cars have already been out of service and the lessor continues charging. So looking at this example, it's the beginning of a rate claim. So what happened here is that we received this invoice, and we have this car, and we see that it's being billed for the month of May, and it's being billed $285. So at the time, the invoice matched the electronic data, so the auditor went on to approve this invoice. So obviously, for the purpose of the presentation, this error might seem straightforward, or it might look straightforward, but as you can imagine, this is not always the case. Sometimes the overcharges are not as obvious, as we'll see. So without our services, sometimes what might happen is the customer may find themselves approving and paying this invoice, but we're going to see what happens after we load and audit the data into our FleetWatch LA system. Okay, so this is pretty much how our FleetWatch LA program looks like. So we look at each car. So we kind of wanted to reflect that on the top there with the car ID. This is all information just for one car. So you have your comments up on the top, and the auditor makes that when we make a claim. We describe what happened, which is the reasoning for the claim. Underneath that, in the yellow box, we have the month that we're claiming for, the number of days, and then if you see there, we have expected, invoiced, and paid. So these are some pretty important amounts that we repeatedly look at, because the expected amount comes from our FleetWatch 2 program that Denora mentioned. So this is where the fleets are maintained. It grabs that number, and then it compares it to the invoice. So in our lease approvals, we grab whatever this car was invoiced for, and then paid. So that's either our payment or the customer's payment. But we look at all three of these amounts and we compare, and especially we want to see what's expected versus what was paid. So in this case, a little blurry. I'm not sure if it looks blurry for you guys, but under the invoice items, we can see that this car was billed for $285, but under the associated riders section, we actually see that the rate should have been $235. So we then made this into a claim, which the account manager reviewed and filed against the leasing company. So a rental adjustment could be made of a credit of $50 for this car. So keep in mind, this is just for one car. What happens sometimes is when several cars under, a rider are billed at an incorrect rate, you could imagine that the adjustments pile on pretty quickly. So in this case, there was 100 cars that were billed at the incorrect rate, resulting in a claim of $5,000. Now Daisy's going to talk a little bit about the shop claim.
Sure. As Iris mentioned before, I will now discuss a shop error. This consists of rail cars sitting at the shop due to compliance. For example, HM201, HM216, safety valve tests, and others. But yet the lessor continued charging the customer. As you can see at the top, under the comment section, the auditor claimed this car due to being in compliance, but yet the lessor billed for it. At the top, you can also see that the fleet manager filed this claim. And then if you look under the invoice items section, the lessor, you can see that credited back 26 days for this car.
Thank you, Daisy. Okay, so here's an example of another rate claim. In the yellow box above, you can see, so again, this is on just for one car. This is covering from January 2018 all the way through September 2018. So like I mentioned, we can see, I wish the field names should be there, but it's the expected rate, the invoice rate, and then the paid rate. So in this case, the rail car went out of service in December 2017. And how we know that is under the service events. We have our lesser 1 and lesser 2 down there. This car went into the lessor's fleet on, I think that's February 2016. And then the rider expired December 31st of 2017. Well, a little bit of time passed by, and then on the second lesser, it came into service July 13th, 2018. So, and then I also want to point out, so under associated riders, we can see that under lesser 1, this had a $360 rate, and then under lesser 2, it had a $200 rate. So what happened here was that not only the second lesser continued billing while the cars were inactive, but they also billed at $360 instead of $200. So you can see that this results in savings because once the leasing company adjusts, they correct what was billed incorrectly. And as you can see so January to June, we're billing for the full $360, and then from July to September, we show a prorated amount for July, and then we just we're billing the extra. Is it 110? I believe, yeah, 110 difference. Okay, so here we have an example of a claim that was filed against the leasing companies. So as Daisy mentioned when talking about the process of the lease abatement audit, once we identify the errors, the fleet maintenance manager reviews them and files them against the lessor. Once the lessors work the claims, we load their responses like this one on the screen into our FleetWatch LA program. Our program closes any claims in which the amount claimed and the amount allowed matches, but leaves anything that was not allowed open for follow-up. So here we have listed the lessor, the rider, and the rail car. The account date is the month that we're claiming against. And then we even go as far as including the invoice that this charge was on. Then we provide rider information, so the begin and end date for the rider. And then we have the shop events as well, so the arrival and release is applicable. And then we have AllTranstek's comments. So like I showed on the FleetWatch LA example, we have our comments for our claim. So just to list some here from the example, there was a time where they overcharged when they shouldn't have. And there was also a time where the cars were returned to the lessor, yet they were still being billed for. And then also the right, we have the paid versus the expected. So, and then the amount due is what we hope to see that the leasing company adjusts. So this is actually a great example because we see that there's a discrepancy of about $3,770. And this leasing company gave us exactly that, $3,770. So ultimately, we saved the customer close to $100,000. So, and then if the leasing company ever rejects the claim, they usually add a comment that helps us understand their decision. So we can also provide the customer a savings report quarterly if they're interested in seeing that. And then finally, I wanted to touch base. So how do we see these adjustments reflected? Well, we can see it in a couple of ways. Either we come full circle and the leasing company sends it as a future rental adjustment on a future invoice. So that goes back to the beginning where we receive an invoice, we see the rental charges and rental adjustments, and then when we load that into FleetWatch LA, we can clearly see that they're correcting any prior charges. So that's kind of how it comes in, full circle. Or if that's not an option, and reason being is maybe the leasing company, the rider company, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. The rider is going out with that leasing company. The leasing company can also send a check. Okay.
Okay, so finally, I want to make sure, and I hope that we're being able to explain the lease abatement and the lease process, in a way that everybody can understand. It can be a complicated process, but at the same time, with our program and everything, it's become simple for us. As you can see, there are several advantages of in signing up for the lease audit. By handling all of your rental and other miscellaneous payments, we'll release you from the hassle of trying to meet deadlines. We also ensure that you're not being overbilled. So not only we can save you valuable time, but there's also a lot of savings to consider. So here you have a picture, finally. This is our car accounting team. All of the auditors have been individually trained to work with specific customers. So this gives them the opportunity to get to know each one of our customers and their needs. So, because we feel that, it is important to have a good working relationship with our customers so that we know, what they need and to be able to deliver on a timely basis. In case we have any questions or anything, we know, to reach out and vice versa. Okay, so, and then as Iris mentioned earlier, our company recently celebrated our 25th anniversary. So this is very important to us because it's an important milestone. We take pride and we make a great effort to make our customers our number one priority. And we try to offer, like I mentioned before, a close working relationship in order to meet all of their needs. Here's a picture of all the auditors that work under the car accounting department. We're wearing our 50th anniversary jacket, so we were very excited. Oh, I'm sorry, 25th. One day. I'm getting too excited now. Okay, but anyway, so thank you so much. We appreciate your attention, and we welcome any questions or any comments that you might have.
Well, thank you to Nora, and thank you to Iris and Daisy, and thank you for giving me some chuckles there at the end. That's great. So it's now time for the attendees to ask questions. You can simply type a question into the question pane on the Go to Webinar sidebar, and while you're doing that, I want to mention to everyone that we have our upcoming transportation conference in September. We'd love to have everybody join us, and AllTranstek is an integral part of us being able to host this great event. It's an Outlook conference, helping everybody to get some visibility into setting strategy and where the markets are going. We have a rail equipment content channel specifically designed for the rail equipment marketplace. So if you'd like more information, just reach out to any of us. We'd be happy to get you more information. So let's jump into some questions here. So how often do you do the lease audits?
You want to answer? Yes. So I'll answer that. The lease audits, we do it 3 months after the fact. So we perform that. I think we try to do it on a monthly.
Yeah, we try to do it between a month to 3 months. The reason we do that is because we want to give the leasing companies the opportunity to send any adjustments, but we still keep an eye on them. So monthly, we can do that, or we can wait up to 3 months, but no more than that.
So we can see the complete picture.
And that makes sense. So when you're doing the audits, I guess, so can you approve customer invoices and then have them do their own post audits? Is that possible?
Actually, we can do that, but we would recommend for us to do the whole process. But yeah, that can be done. We can, if the customer prefers, we can sign them up in FleetWatch 2. We can do the package, approve the invoices, everything, and then we can just send it to them. And if they want to follow up and do a post audit, they can do that. But we don't recommend it only because we have all the information in file and we have all the history. So we feel like it would be more beneficial to them if we do all three things, all three services.
So that would be FleetWatch 2, FleetWatch IPA, and FleetWatch LA. So the maintaining of their fleets, the lease approvals, and then the lease abatements.
That's correct.
Okay. Yeah, and so one of the things that kind of comes up, because and I think you guys mentioned it, it's time and money, right? So the amount of time that you have to put forth to go through all of this process, and a customer says, look, that's a lot of time and energy, and at the same time, can somebody do it better than me rather than having it in-house? So I guess from that standpoint, how automated is this process that's put in place?
How automated? Like the
yeah, and let me kind of go from that. Is it how? Because when you talk about a lot of the matching things that are happening, right? I'm assuming that that those things you've already got algorithms set up to do that and to find those things. So because if it's time, then one is you're saving time for the customer, and then they can have a better transparency sooner. And so kind of give us a little idea of what that looks like.
Yes, exactly. That's a really good point that you brought up. So that's kind of what I mentioned that earlier in the presentation, that obviously for the sake of the presentation, we try to make things to look as simple as possible, especially when it comes to the rate claims and the shop claims. So oftentimes though, especially if there's a big fleet, if there's several hundred several hundred cars under a certain rider, and some are going to shop and they have different days that they're in shop for different reasons, it just makes it that much easier that because of programs like FleetWatch IPA and FleetWatch LA, we can just clearly see what's expected of each car and then what's actually billed for each car. So it just makes it a little bit easier. Like you said, it's the transparency of it that when we're looking at this on a car-by-car basis, it's very obvious. And another thing that I like is that we see the trail throughout the year. So if we see that they're, like Denora, or like we mentioned earlier, if it's 3 months after the fact, then we kind of see that sometimes, they're trying to correct it, they're trying to catch up for shop credits. We can see all of that, and we can make the appropriate, judgment call. So yeah, I mean, that's why I think I wanted to show a little bit of the FleetWatch LA system, because it just makes it so much easier to manage and see those cars and what they're doing, how they're being built.
Okay, and that makes sense. So when and this is taking a step going in a different direction here, but when the lease invoice is approved to pay, who's the customer pay? Is it AllTranstek or is it to the lessor?
Actually, we can do either way. If it works better for the customer, we put a nice package together. We put a list of the invoices, a cover page of the invoices, along with the reports, and we just send it to the customer either 1 to 3 times a month, depending on how many lessors they have. So yeah, we can do that. Just put the whole package together of everything that has been approved, and then they can take care of the payment. But we can also do the same thing, but we bill the customer. We put all the amount that is due to each of the lessor, and we bill the customer. So, and then once we receive the money from the customer, then we can make the payments for them, so they don't have to worry about doing that.
Right.
And the advantage to that is that we do it in a timely basis, so that they can avoid any late charges. So, but either way works. So whatever works for the customer, that's what we're here to do.
But to that point, the easiest thing for the customers is the latter part, right? Because we're always looking for ease of use. Am I correct?
Right. And then what happens too is sometimes the leasing company comes to us and they're asking for payment statuses and such. So it makes it easier that since if we already maintain the payment, we can easily update them and keep communication with them. And yeah, the customer won't need to worry.
Okay. Good. And then we'll wrap this up. So let's go with this will be the final topic. Because we talked about time and money before. Everybody is always kind of looking return on investment a little bit, and and you've mentioned this a little bit, but how should somebody be looking at it? What should be kind of that return on the investment if they're gonna pay to have this service done? Typically, what should they expect to get out of this? Do you have a general rule of thumb for everybody to kind of look at?
I think it's dependent. I think it depends on the fleet size and then the different shops. We have some customers that their cars are constantly going to shops, so they really benefit from this type of service. And like the examples that we mentioned, sometimes it can be up to thousands of dollars because those cars just accumulate and the rate doesn't go into effect when it should have, So we can definitely see that sometimes it does, it pays off within itself because it provides not only the transparency, we also collect their records and, provide any reports that they might need. But then, also we make the claims so that the leasing company can make the adjustments for it.
Yeah, and one thing that I want to add to that I think from every single customer that we have right now, I want to say that all of them have seen the benefits of signing up for this type of audits. So I think they've been pretty happy because it has paid off. There's so many things that they don't even realize that they could be saving, but they don't realize that they can do, or that they're being overbilled, or they just don't have the time. So yeah, definitely, I think it pays off. I think the investment is worth it. I haven't seen to this date. I've been with the company for 15 years. Everybody's been very happy with their returns.
So let's. Do you have a success number that you've ever hit before that you're like, holy cow, I can't believe we saved that much money for somebody? Do you have a number out there?
I think the number that I want to say is going to be between about a 90% rate. I see this on a regular basis, yes. So it's about a 90%, rate that.
And what happens too is sometimes, like, you mentioned the EQ or excess mileage invoices, they get disputed, and we see thousands of dollars just completely disappear.
Yeah, that's one of the. Thank you, Iris, for reminding me. Yes, Eric, that's one of the advantages too. Because we find savings everywhere, either in the lease invoices, in the rental charges, the equalization charges, the excess mileage. So it's I want to say it's an excellent investment because many times, we have a good working relationship with the railroads. And a lot of the times we see where the leasing company is billing for equalization, and then once we go to the railroad, they decide to cancel the invoice. So there's a lot of ways and different ways that the customer can save.
Well, that's great. So we'll end our Q&A here, and I'd like to tell everybody, please do not hesitate to follow up with Iris, Daisy, Denora, or anyone on the AllTranstek or the FTR team if you need anything. Again, thank you to the three of you for joining us today and for the presentation. Finally, then thanks to everyone for attending, and I hope you have a fantastic day. This concludes our webinar.